Welcome to this week's SV Lynx video. Well, we are in the rainy season here in California, but this week we have sunny and warm weather, so we're going to take a chance and get that copper coat on the first hull. Let's go over to the lot and see what's going on.
Okay, it's time to take off these forms. We're just going to pull them up, let the plastic come right with them. You ready?
You going to the bow?
Yep. There's the pallets up there for them. Okay, so this time we're going to lay it down flat. More rain, unscheduled rain, meaning the weather reports didn't say there's going to be any rain, but it rained last night. We had everything covered, so that's cool. We've uncovered this morning. You can see the plastic on the ground here. And it was still raining in the morning, so we just came in at after lunch here. Says all we need to really get done today is to give a light sanding on this port hull. And that's because tomorrow it's supposed to still be sunny like it is now. And we're going to go ahead and get the copper coat on here. It's supposed to be warm enough that night as well to cure. So we need to get this one sanded today, and we'll copper coat this tomorrow. One of many challenges of building outdoors like this is dew, because even if it's not raining, especially in the winter like this, there's just a lot of dew. This plastic over here is just sopping wet. And so since we're trying to put on copper coat today, it's water-based. So it's an epoxy, but it's water-based. And that means that you cannot get even dew on it for the first 48 hours. So as you can see, we're setting up easy ups along here, and we're going to put a couple more, and then we're going to take this huge piece of plastic and go over the whole thing and basically create a 50-foot long tent over this hull so that it won't get dew on it tonight. It's not going to rain. It's going to be nice weather today and tomorrow, but it's still going to have dew in the morning. So we've got to cover this whole thing. That also means that though we planned on painting copper coat on the opposite porthole over here, tomorrow, that's not going to happen because we won't have enough plastic and easy ups to cover both of them, and this has to set up for 48 hours. So that means that we really won't do that other hull for about a week or so, probably longer than a week, and simply because next Wednesday we're having a week-long rain, and so we can't be doing that during that whole period. So we'll have to wait through that rain before we can do that one, because we'll need the same plastic and all these easy ups to go over that one, and these have to be here for 48 hours. The other thing that we found out and have to do is once the copper coat is on, you want it to cure, but not completely. You don't want it to completely harden, and so you want it to cure just enough to be sanded and then sand it. And the reason for that is it's a lot easier to sand that way. So you basically start sanding the moment that it doesn't gum up the sandpaper. And if you wait till it's fully cured, the issue there is that it's incredibly hard to sand. And so the instructions from the copper coat site tell you to sand it while it's still basically just a little better than green. And then after that, it can sit as long as you want before it goes in the water. It doesn't matter, go years. So, but we do have to sand this. So we'll sand this hopefully next Wednesday, giving it enough time to set up, we hope, before the rain actually starts. So we'll see, but that's the plan. And we're gonna get these easy ups and the plastic up, and then we'll have our mixers show up. We've got help coming with Dale, Brian's brother, and my sister Rhonda and her husband Mike, all coming to help us with the Coppercoat today. Oh, well then. Okay, so plastic is basically a big tent over the hull now, so that'll keep the dew off. Now we have to clamp all this stuff down, make sure the wind's not going to take it away. Operation Easy Up tent complete. We had to pull the sides up so that we have light in here while we work, but we wanted to get the plastic up on top so that once the Coppercoat's done, we don't have to be messing with that in case we drop anything on the paint. Now all we do is just drop the two sides down and it's good to go till morning.
Today we're going to be putting on the antifoul on the port hull, and we're using Coppercoat. The reason we're using Coppercoat is it lasts 10 years, and that is really impressive. And it will be very helpful for us because we won't have to haul out the boat after just 2 or 3 years.
Actually, it's even 1 to 2 years depending on the antifoul that you choose. So anywhere in that range. So that's a lot. And every time you pull a big giant 50-foot by 26 feet wide catamaran out, it's going to be a lot of money, and then you have to pay for yard days as you sand it. If you don't want to do all the sanding work yourself, you're going to have to pay somebody to sand that down and apply your antifoul. 10 years, that's how long this lasts. And so that's why we chose it. And now there's a thing where people think it's expensive, but it's only initially expensive. So for example, it might cost you $600, and again, that price varies quite a bit between different products. But let's say it costs you about $600 for a standard antifoul for this boat. With Coppercoat, it was $2,000, so that's slightly more than 3 times more expensive. But remember, we don't have to haul it out for 10 years. So each time you hauled it out, and that cost you $1,000, and then the yard fees and everything, you could be $2,000 to $3,000 to apply your new antifoul. Every 1 to 2 years, let's call it 2 years. In 10 years, that's 5 times. 5 times 2,000 is 10 grand. This is 2,000 one time for that 10 years. So that's why we chose to go with Coppercoat, because it's a lot less work for us, a lot fewer times where we have to find a place that can haul a large catamaran out, which aren't that frequent in some parts of the world. And so it's just a lot better for our trip around the world. So that's what we're going to do. Now this is the product you see down here. You have your resonant hardener, and these are packages of actual copper in a powder form that we'll be adding. And so Rhonda and her husband Mike are going to be doing the mixing today. They're often here doing our mixing for us. And then Brian and Dale and myself are going to be going down over here and getting that on. And what they're doing right now is getting the tape line on the hull for us. We've already cleaned the hull twice with alcohol to make sure it was very clean. And we also sanded it, which we showed you earlier in this video, so that the surface is roughened up with an 80 grit sandpaper, so it's ready to go. This is our mad scientist, Mike. He's actually a unicorn. That's why there's a bump of white on his head. So what he's doing is he's mixing 1-to-1 on the hardener and the epoxy here. So that takes it up by volume, and then we're going to mix in 0.9 of the copper, which is already pre-measured out into that cup right there next to him. So he's only supposed to stir this for about 30 seconds, and then he's going to put in 1 capful of isopropyl alcohol. It should be either between 91 and 99%. We're at 99%, so that works. So 1 cap of that goes in, just like that. And now he mixes again. And then he's going to stir in the 0.9 of the copper, and that's powdered copper. And that little tiny cup there weighs more than you think. It's like picking up a metal bar. And he's going to mask up for putting the powder in right now. So here we are putting on the first coat, and you'll notice it doesn't cover all the way. You can still see through to the gray barrier coat underneath. And that is as intended and as described in the application videos by Coppercoat. So we're going down the hull. Brian's going down one side while I'm on the opposite side putting on this first coat. And Dale is delivering the product while Mike and Rhonda are over there mixing as we call for it, because it only takes about 3 minutes to mix a batch. So once we're getting close, we just yell to them, start a new batch, and they mix it up, and Dale delivers it and pours it into our 2 rolling trays here. Back here comes Dale. And that keeps us going, and it's a pretty much continuous process for us, because with just Brian and I rolling, by the time we reach the end of this boat, the bow where we started will be tacky, and it's time to put on the second coat. And so it's going to be non-stop rolling for many, many hours for us. This is coat number 2 that we're getting on here now. And while we're putting this on, I thought I'd tell you something that has to do with one of our viewer questions about this. He asked, why are we putting this antifoul on now? You know, most boats are going to finish the boat and then put on their antifoul right before they're going to go in the water. So why are we doing it when all we have are a couple of canoes and we got approximately 2 years left of building time? So are we crazy? Yes, as crazy as a fox. So here's what happened. I figured out that I wanted to put this on, and I had my reasons, but just because I decide to do something doesn't mean it's right. So what I did is I set up a meeting with the manufacturer of this boat, Schionning, and discussed my idea with them. And at the beginning of that discussion, they were right with you guys in the sense of, why are you putting the antifoul on now? And I said, well, let me give you my reasons, and then you tell me why I shouldn't do it and why I should do it the way you recommended originally, later, in other words. And so I said, here's my first problem with putting it on later. Once we flip these canoes over and put them on the forms on here, the bottom of this hull is going to be 9 inches. That's about that much off the ground. And to get this 4 layers of Coppercoat rolled underneath the boat that low off the ground would be a royal pain in the butt. Where you can see that we can stand upright and roll without any leaning over, crawling around on the ground where we can't see, up under the, where the keel portion of the boat would be. It's just so much easier to put it on now. So that's number 1 reason. If I paint it now, I don't have to worry about where the cradles are. So I can paint the entire thing. He says, yeah, but you just normally lift the boat up with a crane like you're going to do when you put it on the flatbed truck. And once the cradles are off the bottom, then you can paint that part. To which I said, that would work great with typical antifoul paint. But Coppercoat is a little bit of a different animal. This epoxy, not only do you have to put these 4 coats on, but it takes 48 hours before it's no longer water soluble. That means that it would have to sit on the crane, suspended up in the air before we put it in the water for 48 hours. Since I don't own a crane, that means I'd have to pay for that crane to sit here holding my boat while this stuff cured. Don't really want to pay that. So, at which point, then Schioning's guys said, all right, yes, but you still haven't cut in the dagger boards and the kick-up rudder, so you're going to have to paint it later anyway, either the cradles or those. And I said, yeah, you're right, but the difference is I can't paint the cradles until I lift it off with the crane. But I can paint the dagger board holes and the kick-up rudders anytime I want while we're building, because it doesn't have to be lifted up. So that means I can have plenty of time to let that cure, weeks if I want, before we have the crane come and lift it up. And since I'm going to have to either paint the cradles or the dagger board and kick-up rudder casings, I have to paint one of the two. One of them I can paint anytime I want, and the other one is only when the crane lifts it. So I explained that to them. At which point the Schionning people then said, huh, you're right. You should paint it now. So we are. And there's one more thing. Some bottom paints might not last out in the weather for that long ahead of time, and so you wouldn't want to do this, but not Coppercoat. With Coppercoat, every time that it's out of the water, there's no loss of life to it. And so, for example, while we're sailing the boat, if we've hauled this boat out somewhere to come back to the US or something and leave it sit for 3 months, well, during that 3 months is not counting against the 10 years that this stuff lasts. And so the same thing while we're building the boat. If we put this on now and let it sit here for 2 years, there's no ill effect to Coppercoat doing that. So there's actually no reason not to put this on ahead of time. And there's all those reasons I just went over to put it on now. And that is why we're putting the Coppercoat on now, because it has every advantage and no disadvantages. Oh, we're coming towards the end. This is coat number 5. We were going to do 4, but we had more, so we're going to do 5. And we'll do the same thing on the other hull. It went pretty well. Not too many issues. So we're happy with how it's coming out. And Rhonda and Mike had to leave. They were here for the 4 coats we expected to do, but they had to go for a doctor's appointment. So the good news is that Dale was still here, so he's now mixing and delivering and all that good stuff for us, and general cleanup as well. If we spill a little bit or drip or something, he's there to clean it up. So he's been invaluable help today. And it's closing in about 3:30, and we started at probably 9:30 when we actually started rolling. So 6 hours, so a little more than 1 hour per coat. And it just so happens with our hull and the temperature that it is right now, right as we finish one run, it's just getting tacky on the far end and we have to start over again. So basically we've had not one break in the last 6 hours. We just keep going front to back, front to back, front to back. And frankly, I'm getting a little tired of that. But the good news is, there's coming up on the end. So we're getting there. And this stuff is interesting because, as you can see it, it's, let me show you a close up. It goes on creamy looking like that, and it turns this coppery brown after a little bit, but it turns pretty quickly. If you look back here, you can see it's already going brown, and the creamy stuff is only this far right here. So that's actually really handy because we can see easily where we're painting, because you're going with this creamy color over the brown, coppery color, and that makes it easy to make sure that you're getting a good coat on there. Now these last coats here, we're being a little more careful to get a slightly thicker coat on there than the earliest coats when they really were thin. But here we're trying to make sure that we've got an even looking finish to the whole thing. We also started out with mohair rollers, and they were working, but they left a different kind of texture to them on there. And so we switched over to foam rollers, and that's really doing a much better job of making a much smoother, nice surface to it. So you can see this is coming out nicely on here. So we're happy with it. It's all going well. Should be getting another delivery of Coppercoat momentarily, and Dale's over there mixing it up right now. I see Dale on the horizon. Come over here. You're going to be on camera that way. The mixologist, is that what you are?
That's it.
All right. When it first loads that, it's a little heavy, so I want to hold it in my hand the whole time. We chose to mix this in smaller batches rather than the primary way they tell you is to, when you have a kit, and a kit is a bottle of hardener, a bottle of epoxy, and a package of copper. And it's 1 for 1 for 1 then. You just mix the three, real easy. The problem is with the number of rollers we have, Brian and I, we can't reach the end of the boat here before this stuff starts setting up. And so we chose to go half of it. So we cut each, what they call a kit, in half, and only mix half for each time. And then of that half, I get half of that and Brian gets half of that. So basically we each get a quarter of a kit to roll. And that means that there's no chance that it sets up too fast for us, and we have a chance to get this rolled. And we're lucky in that with the temperatures as they are, like I mentioned, that we managed to get the whole hull done before the front gets to a point where it needs to get the paint going on, because it still needs to be tacky and not dry. And so we just make it, and then we go to the front, and it works. So what could we do if that hadn't worked? We would have had to bring in a couple of extra roller people and rolled more on faster. But this worked out with the two of us, and as long as we had my sister, Mike, and Dale helping to mix and do other things, that allowed Brian and us to never stop rolling this whole 6 hours. So would have been much harder without them. Being a catamaran, of course, we can split up the two hulls into two different days of painting. So we'll just do a repeat of today, but not for about 10 days, because this one has to keep this top on here for the next couple days and to get hardened up so that it's not water soluble anymore. And then that means we can't put the Coppercoat on the other one, and then it's going to rain for a week, so we can't do it during that. So that's 10 days. So about 10 days from now, we'll roll the Coppercoat onto the starboard hull. I'm ahead of Brian, but that's okay because I got some other stuff to do. So I'll let him catch up on his end while I go do those other things momentarily. I did the end for you on the... So you can see how it comes out. All very nice. And this is, I can't touch it still. This is still tacky. But it's all good. Got all 5 coats on. And we'll make sure this is all fully covered for the dew so we don't get any dew on it tonight. And come back in tomorrow and see how it did. Okay, it's the next day, and this is nicely set up now. Not tacky at all, of course. And we forgot to pull the tape, so we came back today and get the tape pulled. So Terry's going to take that side, and I'm going to do this side, and we're going to see if we can't get this to pull off. All right, off we go. Get my tape split. It's also good that it's getting done today because that got us down here on a day off, and you can probably hear the winds blowing. We have what's called a Santa Ana wind condition going on, which is some heavy winds from the desert. And so we need to take down this tarp or it might blow away. I told you we had to take the plastic down. Looks like the plastic decided to take itself down. Very windy all of a sudden. I mean, actually in the last 10 minutes, this wind just started coming up. Oh, looks good.
So we accomplished our goal and got that copper coat on the first hull. And we want to give a very big thank you to Mike, Rhonda, and Dale for their help on that project.
This coming week, unfortunately, we're back to rain again. So we can't do the second canoe. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to start building our dagger boards. And we're going to do that in my garage where it's nice and protected from the rain. So you can come along next week and check that video out.
So thank you very much to all of our patrons. You can see them here. And thank you to everyone else for watching and commenting on our videos.
Yeah, thank you so much. We really appreciate you guys watching. So we'll see you next week.
Oh, don't forget, like and subscribe and click on the bell icon to be notified of that next video.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.